You've tuned in to T.C. McCarthy, the most handsome and entertaining science fiction author on video. Thanks for tuning in again. I appreciate everybody again for putting up with the awful video in my previous set of videos. Remember, my new book, Tyger Burning, is coming out in July of 2019. Pre-order it now. Picture of it here, video here, pew, explaining why it's important to pre-order. I could really use that help because you don't have to, you can buy the book now. And if you pre-order at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever, you can do it online. It really helps me in terms of my first week of sales. And I did that video that I pointed to earlier where I put a card in here in this YouTube video. It explains in detail what I'm talking about, so I'm not going to go any further. But buy my book. It's July 2019. You can pre-order it now. What are we talking about today? Transhumanism. Now, it's interesting. A while ago, I was asked, this is several years ago, back in, I think it was 2013, 2014, around then, a good friend of mine who I've lost touch with since then, the husband of Jody Lynn Nye, and he's a science fiction writer. He was helping to organize a lot of the panels at Dragon Con. Now, if you've been to Dragon Con, I'm going to start putting some pictures here of Dragon Con. If you've been there before, it is a zoo. It is a crazy, crazy, crazy convention. Lots of science fiction stuff going on there. It's far less political than WorldCon is, so it's definitely one of my favorite conventions to go to. I just don't get a chance to go that often, even though it's not that far away from me. But I was on a panel that involved the subject of transhumanism, a subject that at the time I had not even given any thought to, even though it appeared as a theme in all of my first books, the Germline series. I'll put pictures of it here. Links to those books are below. They're still available for purchase, maybe used versions and stuff. I think my publisher has stopped making them available, which means, fingers crossed, I might be able to get my rights back on those, but you can get them used and those types of things. But anyway, it was a major theme of my book, this concept of, becoming greater than a human being through the use of technology, okay? So what is a formal definition of transhumanism? Basically, it's a way of envisioning the future where instead of just being a body, flesh and blood, a brain, arms, eyes, etc., we augment our human experience or expand our human experience with the use or through the use of technology. So it could mean anything from uploading your entire consciousness into a computer and becoming essentially, energy on wire, or it can just mean something as simple as implanting something in your brain to help store memories, etc., etc. In fact, if you've watched the series Black Mirror, there's an early episode where they have this thing called a grain, I think, some of the characters, and it recurs through multiple episodes. And it's this small storage chip that they implant right behind the ear, above the ear, and it allows the users to record all their experiences and recall them at a moment's notice, which is nice in some cases. In other cases, it's not. One episode, I think, where it goes into detail on this is the guy, I think he catches he's totally in love with this woman, and he captures all the evidence on his grain of the fact that she's having an affair. And one of the great things about the human mind is that we forget, right? And so we can overcome some of the most painful experiences in our lives because we forget them. Not so with one of these grains. You can play it over and over and over again at your will. And in case of this guy, and probably a lot of people, it drives him absolutely insane. So those are the kinds of things that we're talking about when we discuss the concept of transhumanism. And for me, I'm very much a Luddite. There is no way I'm going to augment my body. I want to go basically the way I am now. I plan on spending my time on Earth as a human and then dying as a human, and there's no way I want to upload my consciousness onto a computer. And who knows, we may already be one already if you believe in simulation theory. That's a topic for a whole nother video. But you better believe people are discussing this kind of stuff in DARPA, in DOD, at universities. People are chugging ahead on research related to how do we expand human capabilities through the use of technology. And at the core of all this is what's called the brain-machine interface, or the man-machine interface. And what is the brain-machine interface? Well, essentially what we're talking about is how do we link up our brain with something like a computer or something electronic? How do we either wire it directly or through the monitoring of brain waves allow a human being to control an electronic or mechanical system? So we're talking about about anything from research going on to artificial, I'm looking over here and it's not on camera, artificial limbs, right? So they want to come up with robotic limbs that people can control through their thought patterns. So you don't have to concentrate and think about moving your artificial arm. You just do it, just like I do right now, hardly with any thought at all. So in that case, it's very helpful. I might actually consider doing something like that if I were to lose a limb. But you can take that, multiple steps further, and it's what I do in my books, in the new book, Tyger Burning, and in my old trilogy, the Germline trilogy. The Chinese, in this case, you've got to have a villain, and I chose the Chinese because right now it's kind of a reflection of politics right now. Nothing against Chinese people or anything like that. It's really just a matter-of-fact reflection of current politics. And I chose them as kind of the antagonists in my books. And what the Chinese forces were doing was essentially, you run into this concept of transhumanism combined with cloning and the legality of cloning and the implications of cloning. If you clone a human being and create a human being, is it a human being or is it just something that you own, almost like an object or a thing? And in this case, the Chinese treated their clones like things or objects, and they basically cloned and genetically engineered these human beings into very non-human things, but essentially a brain with just the basic life support mechanisms there, and then that human-like thing was attached to essentially robots of various different kinds, and these things grew up not as normal human beings, but they never knew anything different from being attached to their robotic kind of exoskeleton, so they were very comfortable with it. It was essentially how they had always operated and functioned. They knew nothing different, and essentially lost every element of humanity that we have been graced with at this time. So it's a very dark concept in my books, and I thought it was one important to explore because that's where transhumanism could go. Look, I wish everybody on Earth was good and had good intentions. You and I know that's not the case. And in the case of science and experiments, people often take Jurassic Park the movies, for example. That's one of the big themes in there is how important are motivations behind doing certain kind of scientific research, and how important are ethics. How closely should we pay attention to ethics in the sense of, should we even be going in this direction? My answer to that is no, we shouldn't. In some cases, yes, we should, in the case where people lose limbs, etc. But we have to be cognizant and aware of the very dark places we can go with this research if we're not careful, if we're not monitoring, and if we don't have certain legal mechanisms in place to stop what I describe in my earlier books and in Tyger Burning. Take a look at those books if you're interested in this concept. I examine it much further. Tyger Burning is available in July of 2019, July 20. Pre-order it now so you help me with those that first week of sales. End transmission. Hey, TC McCarthy here, the most eclectic and entertaining science fiction author on YouTube, maybe even the internet. Thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. As usual, buy my books. I've got a new one coming out in July, and I'll have a giveaway coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. Appreciate you subscribing to my channel, and please, 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 please don't forget to click that little bell icon so that whenever I upload new content, you get notified. Thanks again. See you soon.